Shavua Tov, Usal. How you doing? Bye. I can play the trailer that Grim just shared. Hello, Noah. You are new here. I believe. Unless you're not new here. So let's see what this is like.
And as the language keeps changing, we lose each other through time.
The paradox of communication and cooperation.
The desire to instrumentalize all things towards desire.
Well, freedom is understood as freedom from restraint on desire.
Exactly. There you go.
Well, now I'm a dragon. Now you're not really a horse. Whoop, I'm a woman. Well, I'm a man. Are you something else? Well, probably. This is what we're talking about.
It's 1984 and Brave New World at the same time. Like, who thought that this was possible?
I trust Jonathan and I trust Paul, but like, if we want to make a civilization, that's got to scale in some fashion. So
what I'm doing is I'm building an altar.
We're trying to network a lot of these emerging communities of practice together.
I'm building an altar, and I can't bring fire from the sky. It's a model that's community sourced and communally sourced and ancestrally sourced.
It was you build new homes, new ways of people being together and gathering together, and you build, and then they network together, and you steal the culture. Like, who are we to do this, and where's this authority coming from?
I can build the altar, and I can bend my knee, and I can pray. Come to Thunder Bay.
Move up levels of this. We used to have the triad of the university, the monastery, and the church.
I think this is a super helpful point.
Participate and curate a worldview for people. Yeah. The university emphasizes knowledge. We can't understand evil because we've reduced it to morality, and we've reduced morality to individual choice. The monastery wisdom.
Okay, that's a little too loud, Grim.
Are possessed and are unwilling agents of a demon, and they're bringing about this system. And it's
The
like,
church emphasizes, yeah, but that knowledge and that wisdom, that better be transferable to lives.
Evil
Too
is beyond
loud.
immorality. It's not just the sum of individual immorality. Something larger is both using it and created by it.
I think that this moment and your work affords the possibility of going back into a medieval grimoire, right, and saying, okay, we can now understand this in a better way that the horror movie doesn't understand. This kind of.
Where are they meeting? It's an interesting place where they're meeting. It's always given. We don't produce it. We participate in it, but we don't produce it. It's a gift. It's a revelation. It comes from above.
This is for me the central existential virtue question. I think right now it's the most exigent, pressing. How can I be virtuous in a genuine kairos?
Come to Thunder Bay. We'll be helping each other in Thunder Bay.
I can do that, and you can go. Oh, oh, oh.
Excited to continue to collaborate and be a part of this little corner of the internet, and I want you all to do it too, in whatever way that you are.
For those who follow the this little corner of the internet, you will see that this is the closest thing to a conference bringing us all together that we're going to have in a little while. It is even going to start a few days early on the 14th, where we're going to have an airsoft and barbecue.
So that was Grizz's Thunder Bay trailer. There are a ton of people apparently watching this. None of them seem to want to come on and talk. There is a link that should be pinned to the StreamYard. I have a discussion hello OIF 3 Gunner. Yeah, there's a link. You can click on it if you like. I'm having a discussion later today in almost 2 hours with Michael Sartori and his wife Mandy. Ooh, hello Noah. Oh,
I think I got it working.
yeah. I know you from Facebook, right? You live in Los Angeles, right?
Yes, I do.
Aha.
You just took the smart tact of dropping out of Facebook as it got insane. Probably I should too.
Well, I mean, when they started, so I don't know if you saw my Donald Trump Antifa page that I had.
No, what's that?
It was a joke page. The Donald Trump chapter of Antifa.
I love it.
Like almost nobody paid any attention to it. It had like 10 likes or something.
Yeah,
and
totally a spoof page.
Yeah, right before the election, they took that down. Grim says, keep waiting for someone who knows him from Tinder shows up. So I started. So I was like, you know what? If they're gonna censor me, I don't want to be on this platform. I was on Twitter as well. Like I started a Twitter account almost like a year ago, and recently I tweeted out Ellen Page is a woman, and they required me to delete it in order to get my account back. So it was like, okay, no more Twitter either. I spend most of my time on Discord. Have you been on Discord?
I have, but I haven't been using it lately. But you know, it all depends because it's hard to find things in there. Which Discord do you prefer?
So I have my own server. To
Oh, you
which
do?
you
Okay.
are certainly welcome. And in fact, why don't I put a link to that somewhere in the thing?
Like I know Paul has his, and I know that you've been on Paul's before.
Yeah, Paul Vanderclay. Yes. So I'm that's one of the 2 Discord servers I spend most of my time on.
Okay.
And then there are some other Discord servers that I visit. Honestly, even the Bridges of Meaning one is just there's so many people, and the discussions, like, you can't have a normal life and keep up with all of the everything that goes on that Discord. So
Sure.
even my own Discord server, like, I don't necessarily read all the messages on my Discord server either, because, like, yeah, our little corner of the internet is growing, which to me seems good. Griswold Grimm says he's been to the Broken. So I don't know if you know about Griswold Grimm. He's one of the regulars around here. He has a channel, and he also has a Discord server called Broken Clock Tower. So
Okay. Cool.
So what have you been up to?
I guess
I don't want to dock you,
about.
but I was wondering what's going on with that particular thing which they wouldn't let you do during COVID, which you were doing as a profession.
Oh, I am still.
I'm trying not to dox you.
I'm back into the solar sales world again. I was out of it for a little bit, but now I'm doing it again. But yeah, it is still a challenge, just because I refuse to allow anybody to force anything to go into my body that I don't choose. Like, I'll die on that idea. Like, I think it's a base level of humanity that humans must have free will to choose.
I completely agree with you. I did get my first shot of the vaccine, but I still refuse to go anywhere that requires a vaccination.
I mean, if that's your choice, that's your choice. My main stance is, we're all going to get through this one way or another in a different way. I just choose early treatment on that. And
for me, it's like, it really is a question of choice. I'm not opposed to it at all. I didn't get subsequent shots because I had a bad reaction.
Oh man, I'm sorry. Are you okay?
Yeah, it wasn't that bad, but it was bad enough that so I had an earache for a good 6 weeks. So after a week of the earache, I went to the doctor, and the doctor told me that my eustachian tubes were inflamed, and he taught me how to, like, clear my eustachian tube. Yeah. So it was the pressure from that not clearing that was causing the earache.
Yep.
And I figured it was because I've had COVID. I suspect I've had COVID twice already.
Sure.
And like, if they were at all serious about this, they would be testing people for antibodies, and they're not.
Well, if they were at all serious about it, they wouldn't ban early treatment.
Yeah,
that's the big thing.
there's a lot of craziness. I don't know if you saw my my video Discord in the time of cholera.
In the time of what? Oh,
in the
COVID.
time of cholera, instead of saying
yeah,
COVID,
you have to use those words. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I will.
Yeah.
I get it. I will code word it.
well, now it doesn't matter. Like that particular one, I wanted to use the code word. We ended up using COVID anyway. So a friend of mine from here, he's actually a researcher, analyst, and he's published on the COVID vaccine. And we were having we had a nice talk about it on April Fools. I still recommend the video. I think it was a good video.
Okay.
But all my videos are good, right?
Generally, you are a higher level thinker.
Why, thank you. That's very nice of you to say. I wasn't aware that you were aware of my YouTube channel.
Yeah, I watched it a few times on some of the Jewish subjects.
Aha, I see.
It's always interesting that discussing and learning topics that I don't understand the details like you do.
Yeah. Grizz says if they were serious about it, they wouldn't put it on swabs and shove it up folks' nose.
Well, most of the test kits are coming from China, and it's a very big question why we gave the contracts to Chinese companies.
Beyond that, why is this country not up at arms over the fact that this virus came from China?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I got banned from Facebook for months for that.
Right, and it's like now it's completely clear to anybody who's serious that this was from a lab leak, and it's like people still don't apparently know about that, which is crazy.
Yep. And they had the same type of lab leak in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And that happened back, I think, in 2014 or something like that. And they had this lab leak of some really major nasty stuff that was they weren't supposed to be doing.
Right.
And when that happened, that's when Fauci decided to move it all to a country like China that just doesn't care. So that's how that moved from our shores to their shores. And I remember tracking it back in the beginning of COVID, like, what the hell is this? And why is this coming out of North Carolina? And why does it suddenly show up over there? Like, we were talking about this stuff in February of like 2019. And my God, the Facebook machine went after us hardcore for that.
Yeah. And frankly, I mean, it still boggles my mind that conservatives have not, at the very least, like moved to Gab, but they haven't. And I tried going on to Gab, and the Gab Stapo basically make it impossible for a Jew to be involved there at all.
I tried to use Gab, but what I found is it just moves so slow that I just couldn't find it to be functional.
Huh, I hadn't had that problem. No, my problem was all the, like, constantly everything became about being Jewish. And
yeah, that
like,
is, yeah, don't let me minimize that. I'm just saying, like, physically speaking, it sucked. But at the same time, I totally get that the morons who think that all Jews are the same and all Jews should carry guilt for the actions of a few dummies. It's just moronic when you say, okay, there's a lot of Christians that did horrible things. Should we classify all Christians that way?
Well, it's beyond that. I mean, a lot of these people, they have such a
animosity,
obsession with
that's true.
Anything Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like get get a life. Your life is actually the reason why you're a loser is not because of the Jews. It's because you're a loser.
Yeah, I never really understood all the stuff like that. It's I can understand people being dumb, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, well, can't, like, my general test in life is if I reverse the roles on that, does it still apply? And if not, then it's probably wrong.
Well, a lot of these people are just
there's bigots.
Yeah, bigots and like dumb. And so what gets me is the smart people who get caught up in it. Um, like I doubt you saw my my discussion with Snorkel Blog. Ultimately, I ended up just giving up on him, but he seems like a really intelligent person who's gotten caught up into a lot of stupidity, and I really do believe that we rely on others to keep us sane, and if you're involved like he is a in a gathering of people who are saying incredibly stupid stuff all the time, it's just going to pollute your ability to think. You just cannot keep sane if you surround yourself with insane people. It just will not work.
Yeah, I get that. And it's basically humans. The way that we check ourselves is by those around us. Like we
Right.
gather meaning through interactions with other humans, and sometimes if all your interactions are with other people who are insane, then suddenly you're siloed off into the insane world, which is part of the reason for a lot of this social justice insanity. It's literally creation of that cult dynamic that forces people to never be able to break outside of it.
Yeah.
Like,
it's unfortunate, but so on Friday I was at my sister's house for Shabbat dinner with family, and it was like, I don't think. Well, I know that I couldn't really have a discussion about the things we talk about here with any of my family because
I have the same problem.
Yeah, basically, I mean, if I started talking to them about some of the things we talk about, they would just think I've lost my mind, and it's like I don't even blame them, because honestly, somebody who's just living their life normally and not paying very much attention to the things that are going on, I really don't blame them for not realizing how crazy things have gotten, how fast they've gotten that crazy. I have a lot of family who are they're living normal lives, and if you tell them how crazy some things are, they say, well, you're just looking at the crazies, which I am, and that in most of real life, this stuff doesn't affect them, which is true, but it's starting to affect them and their kids and everything they do in life. But also, I think there's a lot of people who just don't want to be aware of what's going on.
The thing I'm struggling with family, I guess is a way of saying that, but also friends, is everybody's very steeped into the idea that there's no truth, there's only your view. And I'm kind of like transcendent of that. Like I believe that can apply, but at the same time, I believe that in a world without truth, everything is going to go insane. And I have a very hard time living with the idea that I don't have the right to tell people the truth that I see, because it's leading to potential mass murder. It's just like,
well, the people who claim there is no truth lose their mind when you do speak the truth that they say it doesn't exist. So that's what I point to. Like, if I were to say Ellen Page is a giraffe, nobody would get mad or pick me off Twitter or anything like that. But when I say that she's a woman, now I have to be banned from Twitter until I apologize for that. And it's like, well, you're recognizing that what I'm saying has a different character than just pure lies. You're just, you want me to kowtow to your version of the truth, while at the same time telling me there's no such thing as truth.
Yep, totally see that too. And my fear is that my daughter is going to be subjected to insane people. That, as part of growing up, every single human has identity crises at different stages of their life, especially
Right.
puberty.
Right.
So I am scared to death of like some loony teacher then like indoctrinating her into the idea that, you know, her normal biological changes that every person goes through and the rejection of your body changing as part of, you know, maturing can be twisted into chop off your body parts, you're a boy.
Yeah, especially like yeah, I actually I know a lot of gay men and a few lesbians who feel that this is like the new conversion therapy. Like they're just taking all the tomboys and effeminate women and chopping off their, you know, their what do you call it? Yeah,
It's a form of gay genocide that I see. I mean, because you're just taking people who are naturally trying to figure out what's going on with them and they're confused, and then you're marching them down the medical route of no return to sterilization. I mean, the Nazis couldn't plan something better.
Yeah. So we have comments from people. Anti-Semitism is the religion of anti-Semites. Finally, Claire Caw said something I agree with. Noah sounds like an adult or something. That's a high compliment coming from Grizz.
Well, I think that was part of the reason why you and I ever started talking, is that I was finally able to find someone who could talk on a higher level and discern.
As an adult. I'm guessing you're not sending your kid to the public schools, hopefully. You're not forced to do that?
It's too early right now. She's only 2.
Oh, okay. Okay. So hopefully by the time she's in school, so I think what's going to happen is that the sane parents are going to have to start sane schools for their kids. And I know a lot of people taking their kids out of school. I don't know yet of schools being established just for, you know, actual schools being established for sane people who don't want this craziness affecting their children.
The only place I really know that's doing something like that is maybe perhaps Colorado, but it wasn't this issue that triggered that, but it was a whole cascade of issues, and some parents got together and figured out how to make their own school, and they kind of grew it from the ground up. It's somewhere outside, somewhere outside of Colorado Springs, and it's only like a few years old now, but it's really
right. So you mentioned, you told me that Indian restaurants to go to when I was in Colorado, and I tried going there. They were closed.
Oh man, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just went across the street and had and got some Mexican food, but yeah,
that's always a good choice in Colorado.
They were supposed to be open, but when I got there, they were like, yeah, because of staffing shortages and COVID, we're not opening up for another 5 hours. And I was like, well, I'm not sticking around for 5 hours in Denver just to go to this restaurant. But I did.
Well, I'm glad you gave it a try.
Yeah.
It's definitely an interesting experience I haven't found anywhere else. I hope they open one in LA at some point in
time. It looked like, I mean, from what I saw, it looked like they were having trouble because of all the COVID stuff. Of course, Denver has started doing all kinds of new craziness, like that now. I guess it's a city law that 18% tip has to be added to every bill, and the tip must be distributed among the staff in the back as well, because it's a form of white privilege to be tipped as a waiter or waitress?
I can sort of get that, but when they start to tag it on to shit to like that type of label, that's when I'm just like, for one, it's very normal when I was working the server world for us to tip out other people as part of that. Two, the staff in the back made 5 times the amount than the waiters do, because that's how the structure of getting paid was. Like, waiters make $3 an hour, the rest is tips. People in the back will be making 15 or so. It's just, but Denver is truly. I mean, I used to live in Denver, and I moved from Denver to out to do solar, but I spent a decade there, and it has definitely gone off the deep end. In fact, did you catch? Why am I struggling with the name? The college professor and his wife, the biologist. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, Brett Weinstein?
Yes, Brett Weinstein. He was doing a talk recently where he was talking and pointing at somebody's Twitter thread of what they went through as being unvaxxed and insanity that they were put through. They were Denver, Colorado people, and they were just like, wow, I felt really bad for them. I mean, I went through part of that, but it was just like showing how off the rails Denver's gotten. And I've lost, I would say, 70% of my friends from Denver just from the fact that they all went woke, and I was just like, no.
Honestly, I sometimes wonder what it's going to take for people to wake up from this insanity. And I sometimes wonder if it wouldn't be better just to like give up, just like put your hands up and kowtow to the insanity. And it's like, I would like to think that in, I don't know, 40 or 50 years, it'll be as people will be asking, how could people have went along with this stuff the same way as a lot of people ask about what happened in Germany. It's like, people just go along to get along, and lots of people just aren't paying that type of attention, and they can't believe that anything is that important that they should, feel an obligation to stand up against it.
Well, part of me is I was in the military for a long period of time, and I lived in Germany. So one of my questions I always struggle with in life was, okay, I'm here and I love Germany so much. It's one of the most educated, smart places in the world. And historically speaking, some of the most intelligent, world-changing thinkers came from that, and that preceded the Nazi issue. How did that happen?
Right.
So now I just started to research about, authoritarian personalities. What does it take to flip people? And this is also the same time when the U.S. started to go deranged, marching into the Iraq War. And I had already been researching about that stuff like a few years before the Iraq War. So when that started happening, I was like, oh my God, here it is. And it's the same thing just with COVID and everything else like that. It's just authoritarianism. And then the personalities, the sociopaths that lead it, and then the people who go along to get along. And it's like something like 75% of the people will go along if the authority tells them to. And very few people have the will to say no. And the spiral of where that can get violent and insane is when the people who say no are physically silenced or stop speaking.
Right.
Because that's when the madness kicks in overdrive. All of society is one never-ending story of groups of people going mad and doing things that they never thought they'd do. That's part of the Old Testament going in there.
Yeah. Do you know about the podcast I created on Spotify, Post Platonic?
I don't know. What is? What is it that you're pointing towards?
So I made a podcast. It's kind of like a music. It's kind of like a music radio show.
That sounds interesting.
And so I've been inviting people to host it. I actually don't want to host it myself. I created a format for it, which I think is
sure, it's a way to discover.
I think it's an interesting and good format. You know, I've gotten good. I've gotten good feedback about it. Grim actually hosted one of the episodes recently, not too long ago. But one of the episodes, in fact, I think it's my best episode. I actually dedicated to Germany and kind of like, okay, and I quoted, of all people, Yuval Harari, who's not one of my favorite people in the world.
Sure, I get that.
But he said something which I just think needed to be said, which is, well, he said, as a historian, as an Israeli, and as a Jew, if there's one country I trust not to repeat the Nazi horrors, it's Germany. And you guys just need to get over the Holocaust. Basically, that's what he was saying. And I think because we need German leadership in the world, and I totally agree with that. I think Germany needs to. First of all, I think Jews need to start putting the Holocaust in proper perspective where it's not. I understand when the wound was a lot fresher, like not being able to look at it and think about it in any way of a reasonable perspective. But I think both Jewish society and German society is actually missing, like, is not doing well because of an overemphasis on World War II and the Holocaust.
Well, let's tie it back into, like, something that's really part of the Jewish perspective. There's the universal constant that Jews have to live with, which is like that blood libel. Not that I'm saying I agree with it or anything like that, but it's the idea that as a Jew, that you're guilty for what some other Jewish guy may be doing. Like there's no singular human, there's only a tribe on there. And that's a form of dehumanization that allows opening the door for doing bad things. And right. in a way, it's kind of reversed now into a way of blaming the German society for things that dead people did.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree with you. Yeah, having this type of historical punishment for people for the things that their ancestors did, it's absolutely horrific. And as Jews, we should be at the forefront of saying this is completely unacceptable. Unfortunately, like the ADL, which should be one of the first organizations to be saying that, is doing anything but. It's actually gotten kind of scary how obviously what I would call the Jewish establishment is ignoring all the lessons of Jewish history that I cannot believe they don't know about. And I've made some videos about that too, how like the Jewish establishment, I can't believe they don't know that censorship foments anti-Semitism and was one of the causes of the rise of the Nazis. And like when it kills me when I talk to people who say, oh, well, wouldn't you have wanted Joseph Goebbels to be censored before the Holocaust? And my response is, he was, and it helped helped the Nazis come into power. They think I'm insane, and it's like, no, this is just history, and I can't imagine that the ACLU, for example, which was founded because of this understanding that if you censor the Nazis, you're just going to make the situation worse. And now it's completely ignoring that lesson, which they must know. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. They must know that what they're doing as far as endorsing censorship causes anti-Semitism, and they don't care.
Well, my personal thing here is I believe the ADL, at one time they were doing good things, but my opinion is that they're more of a political activism force now, not in any way caring about truth from an empirical base point. Like, power is all they care about. And I don't like to say that because I wish that wasn't true. But, watching how they demonize some people for speaking truth on uncomfortable subjects, I don't trust them anymore.
Yeah, and honestly, the same is true of the ACLU. I never really liked them because of some of the things they did were beyond what I thought was really civil liberties. They were, in fact, kind of a mouthpiece for left-wing things as opposed to just civil liberties. But now they've completely lost their mind and not at all doing the things that they claim they want to do. And if you listen to Rogan, he's had the founder, his name is Ira something. I forget what exactly his name was, but he's been on there several times talking about how the ACLU is doing the opposite of everything it was founded to do. And Alan Dershowitz says the same thing. It's gotten really, really crazy.
Yeah, and that's part of their suddenly, like, they're for like trans rights and all the things like that, and they're fighting to silence people and ending women's spaces, and just like, what are you guys doing?
Gun control. Yeah. I always disliked how they were so left wing, but there were things I could understand and agree with, like, for example, free speech for Nazis and things like that. But now they just seem to have completely lost their mind and no utility to society whatsoever.
Yeah, it's hard to trace back what the main reason for that is. I mean, because I grew up as a liberal, leftist. I mean, I voted for Bernie Sanders. I campaigned for him. But then suddenly everybody started to go crazy. I was like, hey, it's one thing to want universal health care, but this stuff is way, 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 way different. And that's when I started to, really take seriously, like, a lot of the stuff that James Lindsay is talking about. Why are my friends going crazy? Whoa! And now I'm the Nazi to them. I'm just like, oh Lord.
Yeah, no, I really think James Lindsay gets it in ways that a lot of people don't. I don't know if you've heard of Local Distance.
He's great.
Yeah. There are people who get it, and I think I was very glad that Jordan Peterson joined the Daily Wire because I think that's an indication that you understand things are not normal. And the people who criticize him for doing that, I think they're just betraying their naivete as to what's actually going on right now, which is the left in the United States has so completely lost its mind that it's really incumbent on anyone who hasn't lost their mind to shift to the Republican Party, not because necessarily you like the agenda of the Republican Party, but because that is the only way of counteracting the absolute insane things that the Democrats are doing. And what they are doing is beyond anything that anybody should be like the raid on Mar-a-Lago.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, that stuff is like Banana Republic stuff. And I got like members on my wife's side of the family that are just like, woo! I'm like, oh, this is a black hole. Like everything that they're doing there could have been done with subpoena work. There was no reason to go to that level. That's a power move. And that's what.
Yeah. No. It's funny. All the people who were talking about how if Donald Trump actually prosecuted Hillary Clinton, he would have, it would have been Banana Republic and it would have been political and whatever. And they were so disgusted with the idea. And it's like, hello, what's going on here? That it's just so like if you really were as concerned as the people who claimed they were concerned about the breaking of norms by Donald Trump, he never did anything like this. And
no, he was literally handed on a silver platter everything that he would need to create a dictator state in COVID, and he didn't.
Yeah. And they are, it's absolutely insane. And what they say about January 6th and like, it's just, and like, I see it with my dad because he just watches the news, the normal news, and he thinks, oh, well, this is normal. And he thinks that I've lost my mind and I'm stuck in an echo chamber. And that's why I see things the way I do. And it's like, I wish that was true. But no, yeah. And sometimes I wonder what we can possibly do.
That's the sad part is I don't know how to I have this problem, so close to my home right now, so close. I mean, I'm so isolated from the fact that I can't talk with people. I think that this would matter in family situations because they believe that the truth doesn't exist. I'm just like,
no, I mean, at my sister's house on Friday, I made chit chat and I spoke to people and I tried pointing them a little bit, like to the work of Jonathan Haidt or John Vervaeke, things that they might find, oh, okay, this is reasonable. That's not ultra woke, but it's like if I were talking to them about this type of stuff, they would just write me off as an insane person. And it's like I don't blame them from their perspective. I do sound like a crazy person. And from my perspective, I kind of feel like a crazy person. If I were listening to myself speak 10 years ago, I would think of me as a crazy person.
Yep. I mean, when Trump first ran, I put a filter onto my Facebook because I just couldn't stand seeing him 24/7 everywhere. Because I was, on the Bernie team. I was just like, this guy's just annoying. Please just go away. And I installed a filter just to make him go away. And when they went and shafted Bernie, that's when I was like, Trump has won. Like I knew exactly what was happening at that point. And I wasn't into like Trump as an evil person because I'd already figured out and watched what the machine did to Bernie. I was just like, the entire system is bad. So I wasn't of the mind that Trump was just the Antichrist. I was just like, he's just the poison that's swimming around in the dirty well of everything else. And sometimes you need bad tasting medicine to cure. But at the same time, I wish he wasn't so hostile to deranged people.
My feeling about Trump is a little bit out there, even for our section. I think Trump's candidacy was helped along by Hillary Clinton.
Oh yeah, completely.
Yeah, I don't think he would have become the Republican nominee if it wasn't for the help of Hillary Clinton and her allies. And when that happened, I thought, okay, so if the Republican Party allows this to happen to them, then they're worthless. And sometimes I think maybe I was right and they are worthless. But then I started looking at everything else and it was like, you know what? I see no other choice than to support Trump because he is the only thing standing between us and these crazy people. And so I supported Trump, but before the election, all I said was, I just hope either way it's a landslide. If Trump wins, I hope it's a landslide. And if Biden wins, I hope it's a landslide because I knew what they were doing in order to help Biden win. And it was like, well, if you guys are going to this length and it doesn't work, and you don't get a landslide, that means you're just idiots because of all the things that they were doing that they're incompetent. They weren't even competent enough to make it look like a serious election after all of the things they did, including censor people like me. Like when you're censoring me, think about all the other people they must have also been censoring, and it's like this isn't going to go down well. And they don't seem to realize. I just wish they were competent enough to at least pull this off, but they're not. And then their response to January 6th has been absolutely insane. And I have no idea what's going to happen next election. They're going to try even harder to make sure that the Democrats win. And it's like, this is just going to get worse and worse and worse until people wake up and recognize we're living in loony world.
I think that's by design. So, I mean, it depends on how black-pilled you want to get here. I always, okay, so for one, my mind can deal in dualities, and I don't cling on to one thing or another, especially when you're talking about exploratory thought where you can't ever be sure. Like, I love to live in facts and find truth, but at the same time, I recognize where I can't, and I have to live within the idea that I can put multiple hypotheses together and not be wed to them, And part of me is just like, okay, did the Great Reset start in 2008? And was this societal derangement part of the lead up, or at least the play out? And was this purposely done?
What specifically about 2008? The bailout, you mean?
Well, the economic meltdown basically is it depends on what level you want to get into, but the theory that is when you start getting into some of the economic higher level people is, empires and currency only have 100-year lifespan before they play out their end, and it's just like a form of Darwinian pressure that always comes to pass roughly about every 100 years when you're creating a fiat, and we're well past that point. And Ray Dalio goes into this, and he's got some really good videos that can kind of explain it simply. But the 2008 was when the system was just like reached its end point, and everything since that point has just been not healthy in all. It's just been insane. So the question is if they're pushing people towards a change up of economic system completely, and they're controlling that demolition. Was Trump's insanity and his hyperbolic part of the divide and conquer strategy? And I just don't know, because I love him for so many things of trying to right the ship. But then I just see a lot of the things of the way that he handled people to create division just was never necessary. And I don't think he's that stupid to know that, because I think he's a really smart person when it comes down to intellectually understanding people. So I'm left with why is he like that? And it's not a happy place to be.
Yeah. Some people have talked about needing a bull in a china shop, and maybe we do. But
again, we totally do.
What he should have done was recognize that he needed to do anti-monopoly enforcement against Silicon Valley, which has been completely taken over by the woke. And because he didn't understand that, I really, really hope that Ron DeSantis wins the.
Oh God, yeah, that's who I really want. I want the boomers to go away, and I want somebody of a different generation to take the lead. And DeSantis is, my God, does he give me hope?
I don't know, because I don't trust any of these people.
There's no trust for sure.
Yeah, and so I don't want to put too much hope in DeSantis. I have no idea what's going to happen. I think the people who have some capacity to actually affect the political machinery, like, I don't think any single person has a lot of capacity to affect that. So Chris Cow says Republican Party is definitely worthless. That's why people voted Trump. Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, I agree with that.
He says the Great Reset started in 1971 when we went off the gold standard and the WEF was formed. There's a lot of people who think something happened in 1971, and
there's that really great website called What the Fuck 1971.
Yeah, and Eric Weinstein also kind of has been pointing people towards that.
Yeah,
but I don't know. The only person I actually think has some grasp of what to do is Peter Thiel, but unfortunately he's not.
He's definitely dropped off the map in the last 2 years.
Kind of. I mean, if you're paying attention, he hasn't. Like, he just came out with a new dating app for conservatives. And from everything I can tell, he's actually behind the scenes very involved in the Daily Wire.
It probably is true. Like, he's probably a money source for a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, I have a little bit more information than most people do, and he seems
like I would love to work for that guy.
I would too. I would love to help him if it were possible, but he hasn't really signaled, and I wish he would signal where people who think that he is doing things that maybe, but at the same time, for example, Grimm thinks that Peter Thiel is evil, and he thinks I'm crazy for standing for him, and it's like, no, I unapologetically stand for Peter Thiel. I think he's the only person who is both sane and actually involved in politics and a big mover as far as how our society is working.
Well, there is some business involvings that he has that definitely can, if you're talking about moral questions of purity, you wonder.
So Grimm's big thing is the cryogenic research, and he's convinced that they're like doing experiments on little kids, and for me, it's like, long, very what do they call it? Hyper longevity or radical longevity research.
Yeah, that's what I was referring to.
Yeah, from everything I've seen, it's not like they're doing anything unethical. It just makes people uncomfortable that people are researching these things at all, and I haven't seen anything that makes me go, oh, your ethical, my ethical beliefs, and frankly, I tend to take the same stances as far as research goes as the Catholic Church. I really have not seen anything that I think is objectionable, and I have to wonder if some of the talk about him, like,
he's a blood libel of another name.
Yeah, it seems like they're trying to destroy him somehow with like this idea. I mean, you know more about the science than I do, but if you actually want to live longer, blood infusions from babies isn't going to do it.
Well, the theory there is sort of sound, and you can go and get this type of therapy already if you go down to Mexico. It's just not very well advertised, but I know it exists because I know people have done it. You go down there and you get stem cell therapy. And
like, how well does it work?
People are using it right now for cancer treatments. Like, as we speak, like, you can go down to Cabo and you can get it done. And one of the groups that's really involved in that is the Raelians. You know who they are.
Oh, wow. I did not know about that. Yeah. It just...
They're interesting people.
I don't see the science, like, especially the people who start talking about, like, conflating Epstein into it and stuff. It's like, not everything has to come down to the same one thing. We have a lot of what I describe as Baptists and bootleggers going on, which is, but both Baptists and bootleggers want alcohol prohibition, but for very different reasons.
Sure.
And yeah, I think people go too far in their theories about what exactly is going on.
Yeah, well, when you don't have an ability to know for sure, then many people don't know where to stop the mind. And a lot of people use the life hack of Occam's razor, but they usually generally tend to cut off thought way too early using that.
Mm-hmm. White Muslim woman who I suspect of being a character of Claire Kaw asked what kind of stem cells, and I was actually wondering as well, are we talking about fetal stem cells?
Well, that's kind of where you get them. Well, there's ways where you can take your own cells and you can supposedly create stem cells out of them. It's a lot harder, and that's kind of where I think part of monoclonal antibodies come from. I'm not a complete expert on that, but there is a lot of people that are also just taking it from placental, and then there's the little talked about fact that you can pull it out of abortions, because there's a lot of them there at that stage of life.
Last I heard, it they were able to do basically the same things with adult stem cells as they can. They just need the stem cells, and I've heard of the use of animal stem cells as well.
Yeah, then you start to get into rejection questions about that. I just don't know, but yeah. I can see definitely a problem there where you can't necessarily put in a pig heart into you forever, because you're going to have problems with that.
Yeah.
It's hard enough time rejecting somebody else, organ transplant, but cross species, you start getting into weirdness on that. But, Teal is exploring those areas, and I don't really have any way to know or to judge, other than to say that I see him doing a lot of good work. I don't need to trust him completely, but I can say that I can see the good he does. That's the way I operate on that.
I think he's genuinely a Christian. I mean, from listening to him and listening and what he says, and I think he really genuinely believes in Christianity.
Okay, I haven't really got into any theological underpinnings of where his compass comes from or anything like that.
He was a student of Rene Girard. I'm not sure if you know who that is.
I've heard the name. I don't know specifics about that.
So he was a philosophy professor at Stanford when Teal was at Stanford.
Okay.
And he had interesting ideas regarding what's called memetics, not MEMETIC, but MI might be, as in miming. And he was a Catholic. Girard was Catholic. His theology, I mean, it is somewhat novel. People in this corner of the internet do discuss him a lot. But
yeah, I've heard his name mentioned. I just never had the ability to nuance discussion.
Yeah, I haven't read him himself. I've heard discussions and I've looked up his ideas. It doesn't seem like he's that original. He has some original ideas, which I think people have overemphasized. And the people who have read Girard that I've spoken to have told me that they think people have over-interpreted his work as well. So
yeah, they create a God complex out of him in a way.
More like so
a guru complex. That might be a better word.
So his idea is that we get our desires by seeing other people desire things, and that causes us to mimetically through learning from other people to desire those same things. And a lot of people will.
So it's a higher way of saying keep up with the Joneses.
Kind of, yeah. And so there's a lot of people who overinterpret him by saying that that's the only way that people gain desires for anything is by seeing it in someone else. And obviously that doesn't work, because where did the first person get their desire from? And it's one way in which we gain our in which we develop our desire for various things.
Sure.
It's not the only way, and that's what I mean by over-interpreting him. I think people will sometimes understand him to be saying, oh, well, everything that anybody ever desired is is from seeing someone else want it, as opposed to this is one way in which human beings develop desires. That's the one contribution. He also has this.
It's kind of in a way like a different
theory.
rehashing of the blank slate theory.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Again, from what I hear from people who've actually studied him, he himself was not really saying it as strongly as people say. And his other thing was scapegoat theory, which is that, which is how he explains the story of Jesus, which is that people need a scapegoat in order to place all their sins upon, and Jesus provided that once and for all for Christian society, as opposed to needing a new scapegoat every generation. So that's one of his ideas, apparently.
I would definitely agree that there's something there in that way, because a lot of the story of Jesus is the idea of the last human sacrifice. And part of the Old Testament was trying to break away from that too, and like a lot of the stories in there are like, you know, ending of human sacrifice and the new covenant and things like that. And that was another form of that, but instead of centered with the tribal level, but on the whole of humanity level, I guess.
Yeah. So from everything I know, Thiel kind of feels like Girard is his inspiration for his beliefs and his theology.
Has Jordan Peterson ever talked about him? Like, I'm trying to remember where I gotten that name from in my head. Who else?
Girard? He may have mentioned Girard. We in this little corner of the internet, people talk about Girard. Some people more and some people less. But it is one of those names of philosophers that are very popular in this corner of the internet, and not necessarily anybody outside of our corner would actually know he ever existed.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. You know, everybody gets into nuances on things, and just like, you know, you wouldn't expect somebody who's, you know, Hindu to necessarily talk about Old Testament things.
Yeah.
Just different bases. Interesting. Well, now I have to go down that rabbit hole of who is Henry Girard.
Rene Girard.
Rene, good. There's another one that Henry, that what's his name covers. Henry. I'll forget that. Side note, doesn't matter.
Okay. Yeah.
So, I saw that you were bringing up the thing right there where there was the talk between Jordan Peterson and the other two philosophers there, carrying on from what's his name's page on there. Were you going to stream that, or were we going to talk about that? Because I started to go and look at that, but I just haven't listened to that talk yet.
You definitely should listen to that talk. Actually, what's happening is that there is going to be a conference in Thunder Bay, Canada, with John Vervaeke, Jonathan Pajot, and Paul Vanderklay.
Okay.
So that was the trailer that we were looking at.
Oh, nice.
I just have this just chatting stream because in almost an hour I'm going to have Michael Sartori, who's somebody who's been on my channel before, and his wife come on just for a chat. And I came to my office, got work done more quickly than I thought I would, and decided just to, I mean, I can't go home and come back, so I decided to
explore thoughts.
Yeah, and see if anybody wanted to talk. Gonna keep this up for another 20 minutes, and then and then go and then take a break before that that stream.
What do you think you're going to talk about with them?
Well, his wife is actually Jewish, so probably going to bring that up. Michael's. So this is a series of discussions I've been doing with people and their spouses. I spoke with Catherine. You might know her. She's a moderator on Bridges of Meaning, and with Andrea with the Bangs. And I'm speaking with Michael and his wife tonight, and with Chris and his wife tomorrow. And one of the things we've been talking about is how in real life we involve people with their spouses, and online there's this sort of expectation that people engage separately instead of with their spouses, which I actually think is counterproductive. I want to see, and that's kind of what I'm trying to model with these discussions, is people and their spouses being involved in discussions, being involved as online persona together as opposed to individuals, because I think we need to start banding together, and I think that people who have been able to find a spouse and start a family, and they inherently are healthier people to be involved with in a community than people who aren't married. And I realize that kind of like indicts me myself, but there's a reason why I have as much time as I do to produce content, because I don't have a family. And I think one way of returning sanity to the world is for us to amplify the voices of people who have families over people who don't. So this is one of the things when I was coming back. So when I drove to Chicago and coming back, I had a lot of time to think about how to, positively affect the world in which we live and our communities. And one of the thoughts I had is by engaging couples as couples. So that's why I'm having them on in something like 40 minutes. Yeah.
So he's not Jewish and she is Jewish.
Yeah, they're
part of the bridging the gap there.
Well, I mean, she is, I believe, like a born again evangelical Christian. That they are very involved in their church and stuff, and so
she's like she was born Jewish, maybe grew up in a Jewish.
I don't know exactly the story. I know that so one of the things that Michael has talked about is looking towards the Jewish rituals and his kids' Jewish heritage for rituals, because Protestants are now looking for more ritual in their religiosity, which basically, so they're turning towards the Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholic and stuff like that. And Michael feels that it's healthier and more biblical to look towards the Jewish rituals as opposed to looking towards Roman Catholicism and what he sees to be less biblical ways of having proper ritual.
That's definitely a really interesting conversation, because that's part of the reason that I gravitated toward. So I was born Christian, but I've been going to a Jewish synagogue for like the last 5 years, specifically for that reason that I happened to find a rabbi that I greatly found interest in his knowledge.
Oh yes, Mordechai Finley, Hashem Yerachem. Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not a fan, but yes, go ahead.
well, he's different, and I fully recognize that for a lot of Jewish people, he's not completely like the norm. He's a little bit woo-woo, for sure. I look at him like as the Jewish Jordan Peterson in a way.
Okay, I don't like that analogy, but okay.
Well, it was Jordan Peterson that brought me back towards the idea that the biblical stories had meaning, that was transcendent of my dismissal.
I see.
And for Finley, he created something that I could walk into, because the way that I found him was, I was listening to Jordan Peterson. I was having all these thoughts of, the importance of religion transcending the human experience and everything else like that. And it brought meaning back into something that I just dismissed as stories. And I still don't necessarily believe in the idea of Jesus as a God, but I leave it as the idea that I as a human can never fully understand all that is God. So I don't try to deal in the assumption that I understand God completely. I just try to be open towards gaining the glimpses of wisdom and holiness as much as my human mind can process on there. And that's what I was really found interesting about the Jade aspect, because when I really delved down on the Christian aspect, I'm like, okay, Jesus was a Jew. Why is there nothing inside of the current Christian thing that has any type of crossover or bring back to that? I think that's really important. And everything that I know about Judaism is through the lens of Christianity. And that's a blind spot, and that's an ignorance. And I shouldn't assume who or what they are, and that I should go to them with an open mind and try to understand something that I do not understand completely, but be open towards their wisdom. And that's how I walked in that door, and that's how I started to go down that path. And a lot of people, as I was talking with them, I would just be honest, tell them that's that's where I was in my journey. And they're like, you have a really Jewish way of discerning ideas. And I'm just like, yeah, I feel really at home here on those things. And one of the things I really enjoyed was also investigating early Christianity, because there was a very big era of 500, 400 years where things, you really couldn't tell the difference between early proto-Christians and Jews of the time, because there were so many different sects of Judaism at the time too. It wasn't really as codified as it is nowadays. Back then, it was a lot more open.
I would say that's
things.
Closer to 50 to 100 years, not 500 years. I hear what you're saying, but
yeah, for sure.
After 70, I mean, first of all, Judaism really came together after 70 because the Sadducees and Zealots, and to some extent the Essenes, were completely decimated by, and yeah, so yeah.
Well, I guess I know that Christianity is truly a creation of Paul. So I'm always trying to figure out what, because Paul created the lens of a lot of the things that became what is Christianity now. And I learned that through a Jewish friend, and I was like, oh, that's really fascinating, and I see your point.
Not sure if you've seen my videos on Paul. I am not kind to Paul.
Well, there's definitely, reasons for many people to disagree with them. I just try not to pass judgment. I don't understand enough to be able to judge people. But I get where he created something that took on a mind of its own, and then in a way turned away from some of the Judaic laws that I think should still be present within that. But for me, I'll go to a church sometimes because I want to be around things that I perceive as godlike, and maybe that is a path towards that. And at the same time, I'll go to a synagogue because I also feel like that is another way for me being present within God. And I don't necessarily understand, the Trinity, and I don't necessarily believe in the Trinity. So it's something in me is I want to learn more about the Arianic form of Christianity that was kind of more closer to first century on there, where Jesus wasn't considered a God. He was just more like kind of like a messenger, a prophet, and things like that. There was a lot of wars, and the Nicene Creed that came out, and the fights battle on that, whether or not Jesus was a deity or something like that.
Have you been listening to Sam Adams's channel Transfigured?
No, what's that about?
So he's a biblical Unitarian, and somebody I like to call a friend. And he.
So you mean like Unitarian Universalist?
No, not at all. Okay. And yeah, he tries very, very hard to like
not be that
in there. Because basically, I mean, Universalists have basically stopped being Christian at all.
It's true.
Yeah, he that's why he says biblical Unitarian. His channel is very interesting. He's an incredibly smart guy. I've had him on my channel several times. He's one of the voices that I have been trying to amplify as much as possible, because I think our society would be a lot better off if we were listening to people like him. And his YouTube channel mostly focuses on questions of the Trinity and the early church fathers, and he does interesting interviews with interesting people. I highly recommend his channel.
What's his name again?
He goes by a pseudonym, Sam Adams.
Okay.
He's on the Bridges of Meaning. He's very active on Bridges of Meaning. And
I wonder if I've talked with him.
My Discord server as well.
Okay.
Oh yeah, you're not on my Discord server. I don't know why we've never like met up for lunch or something. We
need to, because I know that you sent me over some things, and we should meet. We were talking about like going to a range at one time with one of your friends or something like that. But then COVID crazy.
I would love to do that. Also, actually, this Tuesday I'm starting a new format for my. I was doing Hebrew Bible in English, where I would go through the Hebrew in detail, and I'm starting.
Yeah, that's what I was watching some of those, and I was definitely gaining a lot of nuance on there, because a lot of the things I believe that's happened over time is just anytime you start translating things through time, language, and copying, things shift.
Yeah. The thing is, there's a lot of content of that already, and I don't think. I think there's plenty of content for somebody who's interested in going through it.
Sure. So you want to explore other names.
I'm going to be doing kind of like an open Bible study with some Jewish ways of looking at the Bible, and it's going to be a live stream with a link like this, so that anybody who's interested can join, and hopefully people will turn on their video cameras. We'll see. I mean, how many people show up?
I turned mine on, but right now I'm just working on a car, and I'm all around a whole bunch of garbage. There's nothing you want to see.
Well, you're in Los Angeles. We really should meet up for at least like.
Oh yeah, for sure. For like dinner or lunch or whatever.
Yeah, I actually just moved to the West Side, so.
I'm not too far away from East Hollywood.
Oh, okay. So we're pretty close. I live at now I live on Sepulveda and National, and don't dox yourself, but
it's okay.
I completely dox myself.
It's not too far away from there, I guess. I'm more towards the 5 though.
Okay. Yeah. We should meet up.
Yeah, that'd be great, man. I would enjoy that for sure.
I am going to end this stream in about 5 minutes. I'd
love to listen on the other one, because that does sound like an interesting conversation.
It's going to start at 6:30. The video's already up. So if you just look at my channel, it's
back on the YouTube one.
Yeah, it's also going to be on Twitter, but it's on what is that called? Twitch. But it's called it's called Conversation with Michael and Mandy Sartori.
Okay.
And yeah. So
Cool. Well, it was good talking with you.
it was very nice talking to you. I'm gonna see if I can do some of these things, these comments, people. You don't consider Muhammad a philosopher? I don't know if that's talking. Oh, so you were talking to a white Muslim woman. I am a Sephardic Jew. Not sure if I'm not sure if I would call myself a messianic or not. The theology.
I have found this really interesting church that is a crossover between Jewish traditions and Jewish services and like Christian things on there. I've never been. I just happened to catch one on YouTube or something like that. And there's a local guy in California that was doing that. He's funny.
There's a few people. I mean, Los Angeles, obviously, there's a lot of Jews, and there's a lot. Texas, even more so. Like Texas has become basically the ground zero for Noahide Judaism.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There really isn't much in Los Angeles for Noahides. I am considering what I might be able to do to remedy that. But yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of interest, and unfortunately, like Orthodox Judaism has completely dropped the ball, and there's nothing I can do about that. And
well,
it's
part of the interesting thing is Judaism a long time ago, before a lot of the bad things of the Middle Ages, it was much more open to conversion and growth in a way. And it was only through some of the bad things that happened. And I think that would be one of the great things for it to grow. I really felt at home and happy going into the synagogue, because I felt like I could belong if I chose to belong. And if I believed in God and worshipped, that I was able to be there in fellowship with them. Nobody judged me. It was nice.
Yeah. I have to decide what I'm gonna do. I was hoping that that there was some way to refer people who refer Noahides to synagogues, and it's like there's no Orthodox synagogue I can send anybody to that is going to be welcoming to Gentiles.
Yeah. Well, that was the interesting thing about Finley is I think half of his his congregation were people who had converted or married into it, and so he was really good at speaking through all the different levels of interface with faith. And he wasn't there preaching the Bible, he wasn't there preaching about Jesus or anything like that, and he very much rejected the idea of Jesus as as a God or anything like that. There's nothing like that happening. But he was very good at talking about it like Jordan Peterson talked.
Yeah. To some extent, I sometimes wonder if I'm not kind of like starting my own thing that is not much better than everything that already exists.
Well, you know what the funny thing is, the saying about, how's a synagogue born? You get a few people don't agree, and then all of a sudden they start their own.
Yeah, breakaway synagogues and stuff. And it's not that I don't agree. Like, I'm perfectly comfortable going to the synagogues I go to. I am not comfortable with the fact that they are completely unwelcoming to anybody who's not Jewish. And I understand why, but at the same time, it's like there obviously is an obligation there for us to and
share the light of creation.
Yeah. And like people who are very strongly involved in Judaism, who believe Judaism is true, and don't want to, and shouldn't have to feel like they have to convert to Judaism to be accepted. Like to some extent, I kind of, when I meet somebody like that, I try to steer them either towards a reasonable form of Islam or a Unitarian or at least monarchical Trinitarian Christianity. But ultimately, for somebody who really does believe Judaism is true, that's just not that's not sufficient. And unfortunately, the Noahide community, from everything I've seen of it, it's not very healthy.
Well, it's always the eternal question is like, tribal versus religious level, and that's always been the some of the problems with the the limitations of the community, and a lot of that has to do with persecution of the past. Some of the major figures of Judaic history are people who weren't Jews or were converts, like Ruth, a good example of that. So I don't look as any type of problem. I just look as it's just humans. We're all trying to learn how to interact with each other. And I was fine being part of that community and not necessarily being able to be called to read from the book, because I understand that I need to be, in the Christian term, it would be confirmed or something like that. But it's perfectly fine to also be where you are in your point in life and also take part in that. And there's levels, and I don't get upset that I'm not necessarily fully of whatever that somebody needs me to be. I let God make that final determination of what is my worth on that way.
Okay, I really need to take
I'll let you go, but I love talking with you, Jacob.
Talk to you later. Bye, Noah.